Straight ahead on Second Verdict. Is $20 worth 20 years? It could be if you're a policeman on trial for passing funny money.
The officer didn't know that the bill was fake.
Absolutely no doubt in my mind, he knew it.
The evidence, a counterfeit 20 and a videotape transaction.
He's given it this thorough police examination.
Just got caught with his pants down.
Our jury will have the chance to examine the evidence and make a decision.
Can we catch him? Maybe we can, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Was it all a mistake? Or will our jury decide this Ohio police officer must cop to a crime?
How many years is he gonna do?
None.
This is Second Verdict. And this is our jury.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Nelson. It's a case that all started with a $20 bill that wasn't worth the cheap inkjet paper it was printed on. We're taking a second look and going for a second verdict in the case. Our 12 jurors from around the country are going to rehear the testimony, the facts, and the allegations from the original trial. Then we're going to follow them through their deliberations and ultimately to their own second verdict. Before we get started with today's case, let's learn a little more about our jury of 6 women and 6 men.
If I think the guy is guilty, he's guilty. But if I think that he not, no matter what nobody say.
I've got a pretty good instinct of who's crazy and who's not.
Quieting people down, calming them down, and then allowing them to say what they have to say.
Case file, Officer Louderback and the bogus greenback. He was on duty, in uniform, and videotaped allegedly passing a fake $20 bill. Maurice Louderback was a 14-year veteran of the Dayton Police when he walked into a local convenience store. But when he walked out, he soon found himself being called a defendant. From the moment it was in his hands, the store clerk questioned the bill's authenticity. Maurice took back the 20, then laughed with his fellow officers standing directly behind him. Was he joking to cover up this illegal act? Or was he truly unaware that the bill was bogus? Returning to the counter, he held the bill up to the light, then brought it back down to the counter. And away it goes. Store management confirmed a counterfeit bill was discovered the next day. But it was well after the bills from the night shift had been mixed together from the overnight tally. An investigation began. 2 months later, Louderback was suspended without pay and charged with forgery. The prosecution called the officer a thief and claimed he knew the bill he passed was fake. The defense called it outdated training and a case of poor eyesight. The court system called it the State of Ohio versus Maurice Louderback.
The key question is, did Officer Louderback know he was passing counterfeit money? Now, I want to be clear. Nothing we do here is going to affect the original trial. That has already been resolved. But we're going to show you guys evidence, testimony, and conjecture from that original trial. Then, watch you guys work it out. Deliberate, discuss, negotiate, fight, do whatever you have to do to reach a unanimous decision, just like in a real courtroom. Are these jurors going to reach the same verdict as the first jury? Or might we see a different one, a second verdict? Let's get started with an overview of Ohio versus Maurice Louderback.
According to the prosecution, Officer Louderback didn't seem uncomfortable or suspicious in any way. Defense attorneys suggested the entire thing was a joke to him, as he and the other officers present shared a laugh with the store clerk. Prosecutors saw things differently, emphasizing how Louderback used his uniformed status to pass a counterfeit bill without being questioned.
One of them jokingly says, "Well, your prints are all over that, Maurice." And he walks up to the counter and he puts his elbow down on the bill, ha ha ha, rubs the bill, and walks out with his cigarettes.
The prosecution also suggested Louderback used this lighthearted moment to remove his fingerprints from the bad bill. The defense shared its account of the event.
I don't know if you noticed, but from time to time officers go to places, convenience stores and things, and buy cups of coffee or something while they're sort of waiting for something to happen. This was a regular place where Maurice Louderback went. He knows Mr. Battles. They joke around while he's sitting there drinking coffee. They have a relationship.
Prosecutors wasted no time challenging that perception.
Do you know Officer Maurice Louderback?
No. I know faces.
To get a conviction, prosecutors need to prove two things. One, that Officer Louderback knew the bill he was passing was bogus. And second, that the actual fake 20 in question is the same bill that Louderback actually gave to the store clerk that night. So let's go back to the courtroom and see if prosecutors were able to link the ink to Maurice Louderback.
This case is not about forgery. This case is not about $20. This case will establish beyond a reasonable doubt Maurice Louderback is a dishonest cop, and Maurice Louderback is a thief.
Before any evidence was introduced, prosecutors challenged the character of the defendant. They then questioned Louderback's apparent willingness to commit this crime in uniform.
The color looked kind of funny to me, so, that's why I was thinking it was fake, because it was too faded, like the color wasn't the same.
All right. Now, why did you take that bill?
Because I didn't think that a cop or police officer would, actually give me any fake money, so it was just normal reaction. He's cool.
When that clerk said to him that this doesn't look right, what do you think? Does it? And he looked up and he did all that. At that point, he should have never even looked up or done any of that. He should have stopped right there. You think it's a forgery?
Mr. Battles, at the time you picked up that bill and you said you took a look at it, when you told Louderback, Defendant Louderback, that you thought there was something wrong with that bill, were you joking?
No.
Okay.
The prosecution noted how simple it was for a store clerk to identify a bogus bill, and questioned why Officer Louderback could not.
When did you discover that the bill you had taken from him was not a good bill?
Almost instantly.
Once it was brought to his attention by a clerk, hey, wait a minute, I'm not so sure about this bill. What do you think? He should have examined it much more carefully and taken it a lot more seriously.
Next, the convenience store manager explained which bills get checked.
Now, are you familiar with any techniques or equipment that is used to identify counterfeit monies?
Yeah, we have a pen that we mark bills with. Each register is equipped with a counterfeit pen, which if you mark the bill, if it's counterfeit, it shows up that it has a black color to it. If it's not counterfeit, it'll have like a tan or like a light brown color to it. Most of the cashiers mark the hundreds and fifties.
Is there any requirement to mark the 20s?
Is there? No. No.
Prosecutors called Detective Sergeant Whitney Butler and Special Investigator Daniel Hall, who testified concerning Officer Louderback's very detailed statement concerning the incident.
He produces a typed, looks like a computer-generated statement. He told us that he had a witness statement because he figured we might need one, and gave us a witness statement that had very vivid detail in the statement, as if he had just watched the videotape that we had seen. To that point, we had not showed him the videotape, and I was rather surprised that the witness statement carried so much detail for someone who just told me that he did not recollect the incident.
This is the original statement that Maurice Louderback handed me.
How did you react when he handed that to you?
When I read the report, I felt like he had probably gotten a hold of our offense report and read it.
Prosecutors asked if Maurice Louderback had any previous experience with counterfeit money.
He was asked if he ever recovered any counterfeit money in the course of his duty, whether it was a patrolman or an undercover officer.
And what was his response?
That he hadn't.
A fellow officer quickly dispelled Louderback's recollection.
This is report 0210260069.
Dayton Police Department records.
And does it indicate who was the reporting officer in this particular matter?
It was entered by Louderback, Maurice A.
And what is the nature of the violation, or possible violation?
Past counterfeit currency.
The prosecution then made sure everyone understood the issue in this case.
This case is about this man in uniform stealing.
The store clerk never marked the counterfeit bill in any way before putting it in an envelope with other 20s received from customers that night, leading the defense to claim there's absolutely no way to know which 20 Louderback actually gave the clerk. And even if prosecutors can prove that Louderback passed a bad 20, they have a huge hurdle they have to get by, whether or not Louderback knew the bill was fake when he did it. Jurors, you guys have two questions you have to resolve. One, did the bill actually come from him? And more importantly, beyond a reasonable doubt, did he know it was fake when he handed it over? What do you think so far?
The store clerk knew it was a fake bill, but a cop who's been on the force for 14 years had not a clue. Interesting, isn't it?
Do you think it's the same 20, or do you think the store clerk just got a bad 20
That's tough.
somewhere in the night and said, I want to say it's the one that cop gave me?
My question is, how many in the envelope, how many bad 20s were there?
Just one.
If there's only
Oh.
one.
And he made a scene about it that night.
Is that enough for you, Tommy?
Yeah, that's enough for me. It's enough.
It's a little shaky to me. It's a little shaky to me. I mean, it's not enough. Again, would he know? Of course we know the guy would know. Can we catch him? Maybe we can, but I haven't seen anything yet.
For myself and for Tommy, it was just one of those kind of situations where for both of us, it just felt so obvious only because we are law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, if the clerk thought it was bad from the moment he got it, I don't know why he wouldn't have marked it.
That's what makes
All right, the prosecution rests. The defense is up next. Don't go anywhere.
Later, in the break room,
Is because we see things differently, Kim, and maybe you have been blessed to be
Right.
hidden from all that.
Can't help it.
I have been exposed cruelly to both sides of the world. Cruel.
so far on second verdict, a Dayton police officer is charged with passing a counterfeit 20 at a convenience store.
This case is about this man in uniform stealing.
If the clerk thought it was bad from the moment he got it, I don't know why he wouldn't have marked it.
Then he made a decision to take a risk.
Our jury is still hearing testimony.
Second verdict's back with the case of the cop and the counterfeit 20. So right off the bat, the defense attacks the credibility of a key prosecution witness, the store clerk, who says he got the bad 20 from Officer Louderback. And then the defense opens the door to reasonable doubt when the bogus $20 bill gets mixed in with a bunch of other 20s in the store's cash envelopes unmarked. Let's go back to the courtroom and hear the defense side of the story.
Your hands go directly up, right?
Good.
And you don't see any envelope, correct?
Correct.
So you didn't grab an envelope, correct?
Maybe not right there, I didn't.
Okay. So your testimony before that when you reach on there, you grab an envelope, you're not sure anymore, correct?
Correct.
The defense then raised the question of reasonable doubt.
So it's your testimony then today, the $20 bill contained in State's Exhibit 2, that you didn't put any markings on that bill to differentiate that 20 from any other 20 that you would have received on that night from any other customers. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The defense then challenged the training of the prosecution's forgery expert.
So the extent of your training with counterfeit money was a 3-hour class in 1989 in October in an afternoon.
That's about right.
Now, in 1989, the bills were different than what they are now, correct?
Yes.
They didn't have metal strips going through them, did they?
I don't believe they did at the time.
They didn't have holograms, did they?
No.
Okay.
The defense followed up by noting that Officer Louderback had received the same outdated training in identifying counterfeit currency. The defense closed by attempting to dispel any notion that Louderback had acted with intent, using his out-of-sight argument.
Maurice has extensive farsightedness, which from an early age will affect both far and near vision. He has an eye that turns out, the right eye.
He shouldn't be a
The
cop.
right eye does not see as well as the left eye. His right upper lid has been treated for a droopy eyelid, so it has been surgically amended. The eye turning out has been surgically treated. His vision at a close range without contacts or reading glasses would be worse than 2400.
All of the information, say here, would that information be able to be read?
No, that's smaller than 28.
Where it says Federal Reserve note, would that be able to be read based upon his vision without his glasses?
Probably not.
The defense attorney used a magnified dollar bill to establish Louderback's difficulty recognizing the counterfeit bill.
The defense took the poor eyesight idea all the way, telling the court that Louderback actually has to wear glasses on top of his contacts in order simply to read.
Bottom line is, he looked at the counterfeit bill, he held it up to the light, and he's like, damn, that really doesn't look right.
The fact remains he should have been even more secure in the presence of a cop and say, hey, man, this is terrible. Somebody gave you a bad bill.
But it doesn't happen that way.
No.
And I ran a restaurant for 20 years
That
and
was
get on my
his
butt.
mistake.
Cops came in from the precinct on a regular basis. We knew these guys like you knew your neighbor, like you knew your son and daughters.
knew them.
You
Like
knew
you
these
knew
guys
them.
very well.
I went into the restaurant business through my family many, many years ago. And that means I helped my family run the restaurant when I was very young, and then I ended up owning the restaurant.
If the policeman handed a 20 over,
Right.
nobody was going to check it.
All right, let's take an informal poll. Let's see where we're at. Hands up for those who think that Maurice Louderback knew he had a counterfeit bill and passed it.
Call me crazy. Just
5 think he did it. Guilty. All right, the defense tries to get this case thrown out of court. We'll tell you their reasoning when second verdict continues.
Later, while in deliberations,
He did say and had the guts and the courage to say to this cop, this is funny money.
This
So
looks
he has to be
counterfeit.
responsible for his mistake.
so far on second verdict, our jury heard the Montgomery County prosecutor raise this question. While on duty, did Officer Maurice Louderback knowingly pass counterfeit money?
This case is about this man in uniform stealing.
The defense argued back by attacking the prosecution's witnesses.
That you didn't put any markings on that bill to differentiate that 20 from any other 20 that you would have received on that night from any other customers. Is that correct?
Okay.
Then the defense presented Louderback's eye doctor.
His vision at a close range without contacts or reading glasses would be worse than 2400.
We're back with second verdict. I want to see if any of you guys have elements of the evidence that you'd like to see again. Any
Yes,
other
I
evidence?
would like to see something. I want to see
Oh,
the
the store clerk manager.
Is she the store manager?
Okay.
Yes. Store manager.
Okay,
yes.
let's take a look.
Now, are you familiar with any techniques or equipment that is used to identify counterfeit monies?
Yeah, we have a pen that we mark bills with. Each register is equipped with a counterfeit pen, which if you mark the bill, if it's counterfeit, it shows up that it has a black color to it. If it's not counterfeit, it'll have like a tan or like a light brown color to it. Most of the cashiers mark the hundreds and fifties. A lot
Is
of
there any
them.
requirement to mark the 20s?
Is there? No. No.
What she just said is there's no requirement to mark the $20 bill. So now we can take the clerk off trial now. He's not held responsible.
Yeah, you
So
are if you're
that's not
handling
his
money.
The woman just said.
She said only 50s
The
and
distinction
100s.
between then
But
he's
if
not
you have a
required to
wrong
mark it,
feeling
and he knew
inside,
it was
you
a
need to
bad
do
bill,
something about
then
it.
he made a decision to take a risk.
Well, maybe at the
he
end
made
of
the
the
wrong
night,
decision.
maybe at the end of the night, they were counting up the money and they went, this one looks
He
counterfeit.
has to be
And
responsible for his mistake, but the police officer doesn't have to be.
No, he's not on trial.
I certainly think he was ascertaining guilt to this cop because he was a cop. And Tommy's had bad experiences with being discriminated against, whether it be, cops or just, people in general.
I'm not saying the clerk did anything wrong. I'm saying the clerk's actions gave me reason to believe that the officer didn't know that the bill was fake. That's what I'm talking about.
He's an officer.
Oh, no.
He's an officer.
Time out. You guys take a break. Go to the jury break room. Pick a foreman who will wrangle you into a unanimous vote when you begin your deliberations, okay? During the trial, defense attorneys filed a motion to have the case thrown out of court. They say the state refused to prosecute 25 similar cases of counterfeit $20 bills. They claim Louderback was a victim of what they called selective prosecution because he is a cop. The judge denied the motion.
Our jurors have been informed they are on camera while they are in the break room.
I do too.
Edward.
I do too.
Edward.
Can you do this one, please? You could do this one.
This is a no-brainer.
I nominate Edward.
Everybody agreed.
Okay,
Edward's good.
so Ed's it.
Edward's
Yay.
good.
And we have to pay attention to His Majesty.
I don't have
For real. King Edward.
Yeah, you're going to do it?
King Edward will behead you.
Now, I know I'm black. My mother's a black woman. But I can't run around and deny that I'm half white, but that's what happens with society, is because we see things differently, Kim, and maybe you have been blessed to be hidden from all that.
Can't help
I have been exposed cruelly to both sides of the world. Cruel.
I have no. I think it's hilarious that the clerk is even something we bantered about.
I think the clerk is innocent. I really believe that. But I also think that it's possible that the cop didn't hand him that $20 bill.
Now, you mix like this, it's designer, it's fabulous, it's great, you're gorgeous, this and that, your kids are going to be fabulous. You grew up in the 70s, it just wasn't like that. And like he said, how many of the sisters came down jumping on me? I didn't do anything.
The thing that's such a chip about him is that
And he's right in the middle.
he's adorable and lovable in so many ways, but it's that just really kind of sends you right over the top in your tolerance
There's a
for
grading. There's a grading.
Yeah, it's like scratching on a chalkboard.
Everybody has like how much they'll put up with, and everybody has days where they do more of that than other days.
Of course,
but it's
every day.
Time, and it's to the make.
Well, obviously, the underlying issues in this case are stirring up some feelings for some of these jurors, some really basic emotional stuff. Let's see how that converts to a second verdict when we continue.
In his orange bag,
There you go.
in his orange bag is the money.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind he knew it.
Oh, I'm sure, Eric, you know, because you've always been right.
So here's where things stand. The prosecution claims Officer Maurice Louderback knowingly passed a counterfeit 20 while in uniform. The defense says he had no idea it was counterfeit. Our jury is clearly divided on the case.
The woman just said.
She said only 50s
The
and
distinction
100s.
between then
But
he's
if
not
you have a
required to
wrong
mark it,
feeling
and he knew
inside,
it was
you
a
need to
bad
do
bill,
something about
then
it.
he made a decision to take a risk.
We're back in the studio now with second verdict and the case of Ohio versus Maurice Louderback. The question in this case is whether or not Louderback should have known the $20 bill was fake, considering he had training in identifying counterfeit bills and considering how people with no training easily spotted it. All right, guys, welcome back. We've closed the horseshoe, and that means you guys are about to begin your formal deliberations. I need to know, have you picked a foreperson?
Yes, we have.
Ed.
Mr. Ed. Me.
Edward, the strong, quiet type.
Quiet storm.
You think you can keep this group in check?
No.
He beat it.
A few jury instructions. Now, based on the evidence, you will either find Maurice Louderback guilty of one count of what is called uttering forgery, which means he knowingly passed counterfeit money, or you will find him not guilty. And that means that you do not believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the bill in question is the bill that Officer Louderback actually passed. And secondly, that if it is the bill he actually passed, that he did not know he was passing counterfeit money. Go to work. I'll check in on you later.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Nelson.
Clearly, I think the first thing that we have to determine is the first charge of uttering forgery and whether he knowingly knew that he was passing a bogus bill. Let's just take a quick preliminary poll here and see where everyone stands. Those in favor of not guilty of uttering forgery, raise your hands, please. Forgery? Raise your hands. 3, 4, 5. And those on the fence, raise your hands.
On the fence right now?
1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm usually not.
Okay, so that's 6. Frankie.
Did you all know that this was a regular place where the office went?
Yes.
So when the clerk said to him something like that, they knew each other.
Not personally.
And the clerk wasn't about to make the officer look bad.
But the clerk also said that he didn't know him personally. He knew him to recognize him because he came in a lot, but not that they were personal
Everything's
friends.
so innocent. There was a special investigator by the name of Daniel Hall who noticed how detailed Louderback's report was when he had previously stated he didn't recall the details of the incident.
Two people talked about how some of the information he gave was so incredibly vivid and detailed. It was as if he had just watched the videotape or he was privy to their side of the case.
He was.
You were?
Yeah, is that what you're talking about?
So, I mean,
I agree with you.
If he's not guilty, why would there be the need for him to cover his tracks?
He was asked if he had ever recovered counterfeit money through his duties, and he said no. And then another officer got up there and said, "No, I have this report that says he was part of this case."
Right, the record supervisor.
Right. So he lied there,
he forgot.
When Battles loudly questioned the bill, Louderback spun around, took the bill from Battles, held it with 2 hands up to the light for several seconds. Then he held it down near his stomach and stared at it for a couple of more seconds before saying something that sounded like, "It must be old," then put it back on the counter. It is my firm belief that this police officer knew. Is he going to stand on camera like, "Oh, yeah, this is counterfeit"? Yeah, I mean...
Why would he argue with a police officer?
Why
I know, just like we were discussing the other
wouldn't-
day, there's bad cops out there.
Right.
So at that moment when it was questioned and the cop said, "Hey, it's okay," then that was the time for him to take out his marker and test it and see if it was counterfeit.
When he might have intimidated in front of a cop.
You have a police officer using his authority. He looks at it, he examines it, he puts it back down on the counter and says, "It must be old," and he gives it back to him.
The young man takes the bill from him, and it feels funny, and he's looking at it, and he's saying to an officer of the law, "Man, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right, whatever." And the officer takes it, and instead of him giving concern and being of help to this person who has said out loud to him that this bill seems to have a little shifty action to it, instead of saying, "Well, really, you think so? Well, let me take that. And I'll handle that."
So,
Pay attention.
the point is, if the clerk immediately noticed a lay person, someone who's not been trained, someone who handles money all the time, immediately felt a difference, then common sense tells you that when he handed it back to the cop would have immediately noticed, "Hey, you're right." He held it up to the light.
I'm changing my verdict, everyone.
But why would the camera watching him?
Too many.
Okay.
Assuming
Guys,
speculate.
let's take another quick vote just to see where we are right now.
Let's take a vote.
Okay,
He's guilty.
Not
I'm back on
guilty.
the fence.
Not guilty. Raise your hands.
Not guilty.
2. Guilty. 1, 2, 3, 4.
He's going to get me in trouble.
And on the fence.
Got to get you guys over
Great.
the fence.
If you think that there's a possibility that he didn't know and that he just thought it was real and he just brushed it off.
We have to understand what reasonable doubt means.
That's what it means.
If
I'm sure, Eric, you know, because you've always been right.
Frankie, critical versus emotional, there's not an ounce of critical thinking in her head whatsoever.
Eric and Frankie are the flip side of the same coin. They are. Frankie wants to hang him, and Eric wants to let him go.
They say reasonable doubt. That means that there is some doubt.
Number one, did it have to be his dollar, his money that was found at the end of the night? Could have been anybody else who came after him. Where's this doubt coming in? Because he was the only one that evening on camera that was pulled aside, that was questioned. That's the only reason. So that's the two things we're working
Here's
with.
a major piece of evidence that you lack, though, that they have not proved, is that $20 bill is the one that he handed across.
But I beg to differ because
that's a huge piece of evidence.
But you have to remember, people, that everybody has their own bag bag that they put their money in for the night.
Right.
So in his bag for the night, and the only person that he questioned was that one guy.
And there was only 120
in his
found.
orange bag.
Oh, there you go.
In his orange bag is the money.
What really irritated me today was really Eric pushing my buttons about the fact that I just drew this instant conclusion about the police officer and what I felt about what he had or had not done.
You're basically saying there's absolutely no doubt in my mind he knew it. That he was passing counterfeit
wait a minute.
bill.
Even no matter what point in time,
no matter
he was
what,
doing
if
it,
you,
didn't
if
matter.
I'm saying well done.
I said he's guilty.
I saw the proof.
Tommy.
Guys,
These guys are bouncing up and down like a roller coaster. Guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. They're going to have to figure it out, make up their minds, and come to a consensus when second verdict continues.
Fence. Fence, raise your hand. There are so many things going on. People are distracted by other people. They're not really listening or paying attention.
He's a cop. They've got to perceive and determine and react instantaneously.
What would you do if you were accused of passing counterfeit money? Let us know. Log on to paxtv.com.
No.
Jurors elected Edward as their foreman.
You think you can keep this group in check?
No.
It didn't take long for them to get into a heated debate over the case of the cop and the counterfeit 20.
The cop would have immediately noticed, hey, you're right.
Oh, I changed my
Hold it up to the light. I'm changing my verdict, everyone.
But why would the camera watching
They're still in deliberations.
Opinions seem to be shifting here. Let's see if these guys can work it out and reach a consensus as second verdict continues.
My question is, if it is counterfeit, and he knows that it's counterfeit, he's going to be like, oh, my bad. Or is he going to just play along? I mean, is he just going to go along with the routine, and he knows that the camera's there, the other cops are there, so he's giving it this thorough police examination, and then he decides that it's okay, and he puts it back down and says, it's just old.
That's exactly my point. Is we don't know which one or the other. We're assuming this way and we're assuming that way. The point is we don't know, and it's such a hard thing to prove.
Okay, and he's a cop. Where's the committee meeting with your two boys in the back?
Arlene.
Could we say the reason he did not take the bill back is because by then the two cops would have noticed he didn't want to get questioned, and maybe he did get that bill from somewhere else?
But we don't care.
And I know
right.
that.
And he makes a joke about it.
He passed it on.
And he's a cop.
We're all assuming. We're all assuming.
Okay, no.
I agree with that.
Because guess what? We're not assuming because that...
You're assuming. You're assuming that he knew it was counterfeit when he looked up in the air. You're using that as proof.
No, honey.
Why he didn't
This is what I'm saying. Okay, honey, what I'm saying is this. There was a question. The clerk brought it to his attention. There was a question. That's not speculation.
No.
I just want to know who's not guilty. So now we're down to 3 not guilty, and the rest of us, most of us on guilty. So there is movement here.
Your disbelief at the fact that when he holds it up and it clicks in his head, crap, I got a counterfeit bill that I just tried to hand over to this guy, that all this stuff can't happen instantaneously in his mind, and he makes a split decision on how to behave. That's how police officers are trained to respond. They walk into the scene of a possible crime, and they've got to perceive and determine and react instantaneously. And that's what this guy did. So to me, it's not implausible.
What makes this man guilty is that an officer of the law who is questioned about the authenticity of currency continued to try to exchange that currency.
And that's what
as Virginia said, and you are, and has nothing to do with serve and protect.
Well,
you are an officer of the law.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
How many years is he going to do?
None.
Okay, let's do a vote.
So do you want to do a vote?
Formal vote?
Are we doing a
Arrest
formal
him right
vote?
now.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Tell us,
Yes.
should we?
Just fold it over and slide it along.
A final verdict, our second verdict, right after this. Don't go anywhere.
I would prefer to deal with conflict by talking to someone and getting things out in the open, and I tend to, if pushed into a corner, I can attack verbally.
Not your pupil today. I'm my own person, and I want to decide. I want to see the testimony, and I want to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay?
God bless you. God bless you for that.
All right, we're back in the case of Ohio versus Maurice Louderback. Mr. Foreman, have you got a verdict?
Unfortunately, we are unable to reach a verdict because there was a 9-3 split. 9 guilty and 3 not guilty.
So this jury is officially a hung jury.
Yep.
Do you think further deliberations might get you to an answer?
No.
I don't think so, no.
They're just so hard-headed.
Who are the not guilties? You guys want to talk about
You
that?
never know. With more deliberation, there might be more time. There might be a change in heart.
Why couldn't you cave?
It's just it's too much. Again, I don't. I feel like the prosecution is essentially admitting that he didn't know up until that point, which is their argument. But they're saying he knew after that point. I mean, I guess I haven't seen enough to get by the reasonable doubt thing. And for $20 to put this to for this guy to lose his job, he's been a police officer for 14 years.
You think that this would have gone a different way if it hadn't been a cop?
I think when you hear statements like the guy's been a cop for 14 years and for him to lose his job over $20, I think it's more of a concern about him losing his job as opposed to actually holding him accountable for his actions.
I agree with you.
I just think that Eric, Kim, and Johnny live in a world that is nothing like the world that Tommy and I live in, nor Arlene, nor Edward, or any of that.
Response?
If someone chooses to think that I have other ulterior motives, not the case. I'm not looking at his color. I'm not looking at he's a cop, but I will say that he is a cop. There should be more of a magnifying glass over this guy, and I couldn't find it.
But then you didn't
beyond
use
a reasonable
it.
doubt.
There should be more of a magnifying
Well, I
glass.
couldn't
You
find
didn't
it.
apply it.
I wasn't completely convinced, Kristen. You're the teach. You're convinced. I'm not your pupil today. I'm my own person, and I want to decide. I want to see the testimony, and I want to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? I'm not your pupil in someone in your school.
She
class.
never asked you
That's
to be.
all I'm saying.
She never asked you to be
Thank
a damn pooper.
God for that. God bless you. God bless you for that.
You know what?
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. God bless you for that.
That's why it's a jury. These guys are entitled to their opinion. We don't have to agree with them. They saw it this way. We saw it that way. That's the way it is.
All right, let's go to the original case, Montgomery County, Ohio, where a jury of 5 women and 7 men, answering to a different judge than began the case, deliberated for 2 days. And here's what happened.
Do you believe that with further deliberations on this matter that the jury would be able to reach a verdict?
No, Your Honor.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Please be seated.
And you believe
The court
that?
then is going to declare that the jury is unable to reach a decision. The court is going to declare that there has been a mistrial.
A mistrial, same as this jury. Probably torn up the same way. Tommy?
It's tragically consistent. I mean, some people get a big old fat piece of reasonable doubt, and other people get a small slice of reasonable doubt.
Could they be right?
Possibly.
I think we failed. We could have convinced you if we had more time. We just didn't have 2 weeks.
I don't think enough people, whether they're black or white, I don't think enough innocence is given. I think there's way too many. There's just way too many people jump to way too many conclusions, and as much as you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, I think most people, I don't think it works that way, and that's sad.
Was this guy in this room innocent before proven guilty?
I don't think with everyone, no.
I just think that some of us jumped on way too quick without hearing everything. That we just said guilty. I was on the fence for a little bit, but there was a lot of guilt thrown very early out in the case, even before we heard the defense actually present its case. But, as we sit here, we're supposed to say that. It's easy for us to say, of course he was presumed innocent, but I don't necessarily think he was.
Do you guys think, honestly, it would have been different if he wasn't a cop? And maybe that's a fair distinction. I'm not saying it's not, that he was a police officer. In your heads, you held him to a different standard than if it had been the store clerk on trial?
I think for some people it was. I don't think for all of us it was.
For me, I held him to a higher standard, and if he was a regular person, he'd have been just like some of our jurors, and I'd have said, oh, heck, for $20, let him go. But because he's held to a higher standard, he's supposed to be an example.
I just think that if it had been a regular person, there would have been far more investigation.
And do you think this guy knew when he did it, or are you just finding him guilty because you think he should have known and he was a cop? Do you honestly think in your heart of hearts he knew when he passed the bill?
I do.
I think he knew. He just didn't think it was a big deal.
He's had it
He
for a
thought it
while.
would just. It would
Lied.
just. Yeah,
Lied.
thought it wouldn't come to this. I think he never suspected that it
He
would come
didn't
to
think
this.
he would get caught. Come on, he's a cop.
It was a bad
Not a smart cop,
forgery.
and not
Come on.
a cop who could see.
All the way up until the last second, we really could have potentially gone either way. We could have been hung, or we could have come with a guilty verdict.
Well, I think you can see why we have a hung jury. A postscript about Maurice Louderback's unfortunate dealings in court. Shortly after the first trial, prosecutors put him right back on trial for the same counterfeit 20. That trial also ended hung. And after going through 2 consecutive trials that ended up as mistrials, the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office finally called it quits, saying they saw no reason to believe a third jury would come out any differently. Louderback has been reinstated as an officer within the Dayton, Ohio Police Department.
I'm very surprised that Officer Louderback is back on the force. I would have thought he would have been dismissed or suspended, maybe even demoted.
In a jury room, there are no right or wrong answers. The facts remain the same, but the outcome may change. I'm Rob Nelson. Second Verdict is now adjourned.